This is the OnStage Blog Theater Podcast. I am not Rachel Wagner. I am Greg Ehrhardt, the managing editor of OnStage Blog and OnStageBlog.com. Rachel is on assignment, currently not for us, but for her own YouTube channel at South by Southwest. But joining me today is the co-host of the OnStage Blog Theater Podcast, Jacklyn Collier. Jax, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing great. I'm missing Rachel, but it's great to have you in her stead.
Well, I'm going to try. Probably fail, but I'll try. And then we have somebody else over here, Chris, somebody or other. You do something. What do you do for on stage blog besides like post memes of like center stage and like weird chess like videos? Like, what is
That's
it?
that's basically all I do. That's it. Like I just look for the funniest meme that's funny to only me, and then I post it, and I assume that it's gonna
Right,
be funny to everybody else.
right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is of course all jokes aside, Chris Peterson, the founder and editor in chief of OnStage Blog, onstageblog.com. So we have a great episode today. We're doing theater advice. And we're answering questions from our readers as well as really interesting questions we find on Reddit. This was a series Chris and I just did back in 2023, and we're bringing it back for the Onstage Blog Theater podcast. So these are going to be mostly questions on community theater and auditions advice. I did find a couple of good ones in here that are a little bit more whimsical, shall we say, a little bit more fun. Thank you to those who sent us questions to theateradviceosb@gmail.com. There's one good question we're going to do here. We did get others that are a little bit too niche and too deep to answer here. We got one question about how to set up something about setting up tickets online for community theater productions, which is not really our wheelhouse, and it's a little too detailed to get into it. And honestly, just Google it. But thank you for the questions, and we promise we could get as questions as we can. But let's get started. Before we get started with the questions, I just want to talk a little bit about both your guys' backgrounds and your expertise to answer questions about community theater. Jacklyn, go ahead. Just lay out your credentials just real quick for the audience.
What's funny is like I feel like, and I wonder if you guys have this too, but like the more you learn, the less you feel to give advice. But I've been acting in community theater since I was uh 5. I didn't know how to read yet, and my mom helped me get the part in The Best Christmas I Had Never. And that's sort of where my love of theater started. I got my MFA in acting. I toured for a little bit. Got into TV and film and did a lot of theater in New York and as well as on tour. And now I act and I coach kids. But it's just so interesting to me because I think that because I started in community theater, I have such a deep love and respect for it as an art form. And I think that community theaters can oftentimes take risks that other theaters aren't able to take or won't take because they're just
Hmm.
thinking about the bottom line. So
Yeah.
I'm just so excited that my town, even though it's super small town in the coal region, we didn't have much of anything, but we had a community theater. So I feel so lucky to have grown up with that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Chris, I know, obviously, I've known you since sixth grade, and since sixth grade, you've been a passionate fan of theater, and you've worked as a director, you've been an actor, you've been a lead actor, you've worked front of house, backstage, you've directed many shows on a community theater. Anything else you want to add to your theater credentials?
No, that's pretty much it. Like very similar path Jacqueline had though.
I should also say you also evaluate auditions for your school, right?
Yeah,
That's a big piece.
exactly. So I've worked for a couple different colleges and kind of been their performing arts coordinator liaison with the admissions department. So I would often run their audition sessions at like Unifieds and Erdas and all those fun things.
Okay. All right, so with that, let's get to our first question. This is from Reddit. The Reddit user is Anonymous Emu, and by the way, we're going to post links to all these Reddit questions in the description on YouTube and the podcast, so you can follow along if you want. So the question is regarding callbacks. So, hi. So I auditioned for a musical my school was having, and I did the audition and got callbacks. The only issue is I couldn't make it to callbacks. I haven't done any of this theater stuff in my life. I was wondering if anyone's not been able to make it to callbacks and what happened. I don't want them to drop me. So I want to approach this from both angles. So I want to approach the advice from the student angle or the actor angle as well as the director angle. So, Jack, let me start with you from the actor angle. You make callbacks, you had a great audition, and you just can't make it. No matter what, it's just something happened. You have to attend to this other responsibility. How do you manage that with the director and everyone in charge of the production?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I also really empathize with this person who's asking this because I know the couple of times this has happened to me, I was in full panic mode because you feel bad,
Yeah.
you feel guilty, there's all this stuff going on. Just release yourself of that as much as possible and feel excited that your work got you a call back and grateful that is something that they want to see more of your work. And then I communicate with the team one as quickly as possible as soon as I find out. And I'm specific about why I can't be there. I'm not saying you have to go into the weeds with it, but letting them know that you would be there if you could. And then another thing that I like to do is if it was a self-tape, that's a little different. We're getting more into the world of self-taping for theater, fortunately and unfortunately. But
Mm.
if you were in the room with them or you've met them or worked with them before or seen their work before, be very specific about what you enjoyed about that or why you would want to work with them. Like if I had seen one of Chris's shows and I was like, I love the production of Venus and Fur that you directed. And since then, I wanted to work with you so that they know it's just not like a, sorry, I can't make it, and that you're communicating it in a very direct, warm way. And additionally, offering, if you're able to, either put something on tape to do a Zoom meeting or to come in on another day. And I think I would really hope, and we can, obviously hear more from Chris on this because he's on the other side of the table so much. I would hope that the team would be okay with that.
And so the pointed question I want to ask you is, should directors take the fact that a student or actor does not make callbacks into consideration when considering whether to cast them or not? And if so, what would be the factors? And if not, why not?
Good question. Well, to start off with what Jacqueline, suggested there, if we're playing the scenario out and I was the director of the show, that's a perfectly reasonable, response and professional um action and definitely would not make me dismiss them, immediately, so to speak, because of the level of communication, because they're putting themselves out there and look, if something came up, I can't make it, this stuff happens. On the flip side, the lack of communication, the lack of professional, communication of just saying, look, something came up, I can't make it tonight, and that's it. Or I completely forgot I'm going away on vacation. While you're doing callbacks, I'm not going to be back for 2 weeks. Could you still hold a spot for me? Things like that. So little things like that where, no, I'm not going to do that. And I think what my methodology and when I've been confronted with this in the past is I think a lot of it has to do with how heavily I'm considering that person. And if it's someone that is someone who really is in the running for a certain number of roles or perhaps the lead role or things like that, I'm going to be a bit flexible. I'm going to, as long as they're presenting me with options and a plan and things like that, that is not going to disrupt the casting process. I'll definitely be flexible because I definitely want to be able to see this person read with other people that's in consideration. I hate to say it, but if there's someone that is on the peripheral that maybe, if we're looking ranking 1 through 20 and they're like, 18 through 20 of people I'm considering for various roles, I'm probably going to say to them, thank you, I understand, but we do have to get this thing cast because rehearsals do start in such and such time, things like that. But please come back and audition again and try to be polite about it.
So is it normal for directors to play favorites? Like if they have if someone blew away the audition, can't make it, and treat them differently versus someone who was good enough, but like for a secondary role. Is that normal? And it's normal, should they do it? In both of your
I will
opinions.
say this. I'm not directing anymore, and I have no intention of ever directing again. So I will be completely honest here and say yes. The answer is yes. Directors absolutely play favorites in that. And any director that says they don't, they're lying through their teeth. Um,
Hmm.
because And it has nothing to do with, I shouldn't say favorite. Favorite's probably not the right word. They definitely have their what I call priority people of like saying like, look, this person, if I'm doing Les Mis and this actress is going to be phenomenal for Fantine and no one else could play this role and things like that. I'm not going to bend over backwards, but I am going to bend a bit to accommodate them in their schedules to get them to callbacks so they could read with Cosette, so they could read with Jean Valjean's and things like that to see how it's going to look, on that end. So, yeah, the directors definitely have that.
Jacqueline, should it happen that way in your opinion?
So first of all, Chris, on another time, we'll have to unpack why you don't want to direct anymore. So, but I know that we don't have time for that today, but I'm fascinated by that. Yeah, here's what I think. Yes. I mean, I think talent aside, I think about, in all different arenas, whether it's TV, film, or theater, community theater, or school theater, or professional theater, whatever it is, I find that I really like working with people who are nice people, who get along with other people, who make it a joy to be in the room and treat other people with kindness and come prepared to work. And yes, like, do you have people that are just blow away, like blow your mind talented? For sure, but I think that all that other stuff is important too. And not that I wouldn't give someone a chance if I didn't know them, because I think it's exciting to get to know new talent. But I think, you have your favorites for a reason, and it's not just because they can belt to like a high D. I don't even know if that's really a high note, but you know what I'm saying.
Let's get to the next question. This is a reader question we got in just now. Thanks to Christine asking, Chris, why aren't you directing anymore? What's wrong? No, I'm kidding.
It is an epic story. We'll get into it, but it is an epic story for a later time. I
Stay tuned.
promise.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to make sure you hear Chris's story about why he won't direct anymore. Let's
I
get to the
do,
next
and now
one.
I want to bring you out of retirement to direct me in something. So
Oh yeah, we could do a one-woman show that Chris
I'm
could
just
direct.
It
saying,
is.
you know what? This is the whole thing where I'm like, now this is going to be a challenge. Okay, we'll get him back.
It's going to be like a famous director dragged out of retirement. It's going to be like when Francis Ford Coppola was, I don't think
Exactly
he
the
ever
same.
retired, but it's like, oh
Exactly
yeah,
the same. Same level. Yeah, exactly.
take back to do Megalopolis. Plays better than Jacqueline's one-woman show would be much better than Megalopolis.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the next Reddit question. And it's about chemistry on stage and how to develop it. So this is from Reddit user GemPie. Feel like I have zero charisma with one of my castmates. We're both swings, and both of his roles are love interests to two of mine. He is an insanely charismatic, incredible actor who has been friendly and supportive to me. However, I feel like either relationship doesn't feel believable on stage due to lack of chemistry. She goes on in a little bit more detail. Again, you can read by clicking on the links in the description. And she ends, I've had good results in the past using various methods like substitution or befriending. Excuse me. But those aren't giving me the results I'd like. Open to anything except method acting. All right. So let's start with Chris here. Actually, no, I want to start with the actor's perspective. I want to get into both the actor and the director perspective. So, Jacqueline, first, have you been in a situation like this where you're supposed to have, like, I'm thinking romantic chemistry, but it could just be general chemistry, like good chemistry, and it's just not happening, So, and if so, and or if not, what are the steps this actor could take to really create this magic on stage?
First off, I want to commend this actor for being smart to say, I don't want to go method with this. Very good. Because part of the reason why I think I've never had trouble in this department is I've gone method way too many times and haven't done that.
Oh,
haven't
I want to
done
hear
that
more about that. Yeah.
That's right. That'll have to be on the episode that's behind the paywall where Chris and I talk about all this stuff.
We're already scheduling way too many podcasts here. We're going to be booked out through June, but
we're so bugged. I think I definitely in the past have let myself really develop a chemistry that then really goes beyond the show itself. And that's something that I've been very careful not to do, especially in the relationship that I'm in now, which is my hopefully my lifetime partnership. I'm like, okay, there's a wall around that. But I think that one, sometimes we have a strange idea of what chemistry actually is. And she might actually be having chemistry or what people perceive as chemistry, but because she's just, this is a nice guy, I'm feeling this sort of bond, he's warm, but I'm not feeling this snap, crackle, pop. Like I would be curious how the director and everyone else is perceiving it. Because sometimes when a working relationship is healthy, you may not feel that there's quote unquote chemistry. Like if you look at Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd, who famously hated each other, but had incredible chemistry. Like people can have chemistry when they're in love with each other, they can have chemistry when they hate each other. And I think a lot of times chemistry is really just paying attention to someone and really giving them that focus and thinking of all the ways that they surprise and delight you and intrigue you, but that's in a very healthy place that you're not going method with it. But I would be
Right.
curious what the feedback is from the people around her.
Yeah. So, Chris, again, it seems to me to be more of a director issue than an acting issue. So like as a director, how would you, so you're seeing your two leads, they don't have chemistry. You thought they would, clearly on the auditions. I'm assuming that's a factor in who you cast as the leads, but it's just not happening. They're trying. They don't hate each other. It's not a Willis Shepard situation, but they've just it's a little oil and water. How do you direct it? How do you improve the situation? What's your advice?
Yeah, well, I'll use an example. I directed Noel Coward's Private Lives long ago, and you have these two lead characters that are former lovers who are now reconnecting and falling in love again. So, if you don't have chemistry with each other in those two roles, the entire show just collapses. And these two actors, God love them, Kim and Peter, did not have chemistry whatsoever. Kim did not like Peter. Kim was a very serious professional, like committed actress. Peter was a little laissez-faire. He was a little laid back and didn't take it, as serious as Kim was. So the rehearsal process was often them kind of arguing with each other about their acting
Oh
behaviors and
no.
methodology.
I'm gonna guess
So,
that's not advisable. Just spend your rehearsal time arguing about it.
right.
Okay.
So about a month in, I kind of finally said, okay, let's stop for a second. And then we started talking about the characters themselves. And we kind of addressed it head on, saying, Kim, you're clearly getting frustrated with Peter. Peter, you're clearly getting frustrated with Kim. Um, there's moments in this script where that needs to be evident. There's they hate each other to begin with. They kind of reconnect, and then they hate each other again, and then they reconnect at the end. So there's all that tension that builds. Let's use that. Let's talk about these characters. Let's talk about why you can't stand Peter, and Peter, why can't you stand Kim? So it really came through conversation, that they figured out, oh, how can we channel certain things here and there? What is it about you that drives me nuts about, and vice versa? Is it the way that you raise your eyebrow at me if I get a line wrong? Or so little things like this, and we just started kind of using it. And then on the flip side, what I definitely said, because both of them were in very happy marriages at the time, I asked them, how did you tell me how you fell in love with your partner? What was it about your this person that you now are married to? Sadly, Peter later got divorced, so let's not dwell on that too much. But um, they gave me a really great, wonderful stories about how they met and what was it about their partner that made them kind of unlock their hearts and things like that. I was like, perfect. Let's use that on stage. Let's figure out a way to use that on stage, and things like that. So again, it is absolutely a director's job. And especially, an actor needs to be talented enough to see when there's a lack of chemistry, to see when when it's truly not there. Like you said, Greg, I mean, they could potentially have chemistry and just not really think it or not be confident in it. So that's where a director needs to step in and say, no, no, you guys are doing good, but let's do some things here and adjust little things here to make sure you feel confident and you feel that you have chemistry with that person.
All right, Jacqueline, anything to add before I wrap up?
Sorry for Peter. I hope he's
Yeah.
moved on.
Well, I don't feel sorry. He did it to himself. Sorry,
Oh,
Peter.
okay.
Oh
Sorry,
no.
Peter.
Oh no.
Peter, if you're listening to this, you know what you did. You know what you did.
Know what you did.
All right, that's the third podcast we
That's
scheduled after
We
this.
have a lot on the agenda, you guys.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so again, to the Reddit poster Gen Pie, hope this helped. And again, if this didn't help, show this part of the podcast to the director and make him listen to it or her listen to it. Pardon my pronouns. All right, let's go on to the next one, which is a little bit related. Also dealing with a bit of maybe too much chemistry on stage. This is from Reddit user Weird Brilliant 2276. Boyfriend doesn't want me to stage kiss in dream show. All right. I have the opportunity to play a dream role, and it requires a very classy and not overly involved kiss at the end. I previously did an intimate scene, and my boyfriend didn't object. But now that we are deeper into our relationship, he's expressed he regretted it and that it will be even harder if I do it again. This is not a trust issue. He's not upset at me for doing it. He simply believes it's wrong for a relationship, is emasculating, and invites unwanted assumptions about a relationship. He is not involved in theater and says he doesn't see a difference between doing it in character versus doing it in real life. She goes on for a little bit. Um, if this jeopardizes my ability to do the role, I'm not sure I can turn it down for my boyfriend's sake. Has anyone dealt with something similar with a partner and has advice? Okay. So, Jacqueline, you made references to doing some method acting. Um, well, let's just start off with what advice would you give this actress? You can get into relationship advice if you want. That's perfectly fine. This is theater advice, but why not? We get relationship advice too. Just how would you counsel Reddit user Weird Brilliant 2276?
Well, and this wouldn't normally be the way I would open this, but I'm trying to be, looking at all sides of this and saying that I do have empathy for her boyfriend because I can imagine that if this is not a world you've ever been in, how this would feel very wrong. So I do have empathy for that. The only thing that's sort of a little bit of red flags for me are like even like the words like emasculating and things like that because it's like, oh, it's really not about you and it's not something I'm doing to you. And to be honest, I don't think it's a reflection on you at all. Can I see why it would make you uncomfortable? Absolutely. I also wonder if I understand they're deep in their relationship now. Um, but I would just be curious and would probe a little bit. Is there something about her co-star that maybe he's particularly good looking or has a lot of charisma? Or is there
Ooh, I like where
something
you're going with
that
this.
he's afraid to say, right? Like that he's afraid to say it. So he wants to put it behind this wall of like, oh, it just doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't feel appropriate when really maybe it's like, oh, this person gets under my skin for maybe a valid reason. Maybe it's just pushing his buttons. I think I would really want to talk to my partner in depth about that. But I think that at the end of the day, she has to do what feels comfortable for her. I actually know a few people in particular that won't do, they're actors in rom-coms and they won't kiss their co-stars, which is very interesting for a rom-com.
Right,
But it's a boundary
right.
that they have chosen. I also know a friend of mine, her partner won't watch her movies because she kisses men in them. So, and again, this is Chase. This is like Hallmark. So it's not this passionate stuff. But I would say for her, this is a dream role for her. And, holding so much space for her boyfriend's feelings, but at the end of the day, doing what she feels comfortable with, I think is key.
Yeah. So, Chris, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So, one is, I didn't read this in the question. She did say she's going to reach out to the director to see if there's any way they could not kiss, like keep the scene but not kiss. As a director, would you be open to this if one of the actors came to you saying, "Can I not kiss this actor because my spouse, significant other, would have big problems with it, and I might have big problems with it?" And maybe there's a change in your answer depending on how if it's they have a problem with it versus if their significant other has a problem with it.
Hmm. I think depending upon the level of what this show actually is, this is where I think intimacy coordinators play a huge role. where it's like, look, we're not leaving it up to the actors' devices to choreograph their own intimate scenes. So there's no concern over like, is it that because one actor wanted it to be more than the other and things like that. No, it's all choreographed. It's a dance, if you will. And so it's all controlled, which I think would help maybe the partners of these actors understand that, like, look, what you're seeing is rehearsed, like choreographed. It's not spontaneous and things like that, despite what some of these actors out there are saying that like they don't want intimacy coordinators and just let things fly. It's like, no, that's how you get in trouble. That's how you get in trouble. So I think that's where the first thing comes from. But
Let's assume there's no intimacy coordinator. Let's say it's a
right,
small community theater where
let's say
they're
it's
doing
that.
things on a shoestring budget. Okay.
Absolutely. Um, I would say that there are certain, let me put it this way. There are, in a lot of the scripts, there is, instead of saying like long, passionate, grabby, touchy-feely kiss, it's just like says like they kiss or they embrace or something like that. If that direction is even in there. So there is some flexibility there. However, if that intimacy or that moment is integral to that character or the storyline and things like that, sorry, it's got to happen. It's got to happen. If that person has a partner that's kind of putting their foot down and that relationship is more important, then I completely understand. And, you can exit stage left and look at someone else. I'll use this
Even
as an
late in the
example.
game, even if it's like late in the rehearsal process.
Now, I will say this. I was not like all directors. I'm sure other directors might be a little bit more forgiving. I would boot that person immediately. Be like, thanks, you're out. You're out. We gotta move on. I'll dress up as the character and do it myself if I need to, regardless of gender. So I'll use this as an example though. So I directed a show called Boeing Boeing. And in Boeing Boeing, if you don't know, is a very gigantic sex farce type of comedy. Lots of physical contact between the actors. And one of the lead actor playing Bernard had a very new relationship with a girlfriend. And she definitely had a problem with not one, not two, not but three women who were very, very attractive, doing like a number of physical things with him throughout that entire show. And so we had a conversation early on about like understanding the character, making sure that everything that was done on stage, everybody was clued in on and understood like why we're doing it. There was really no improv, there was no embellishing. It really, but through communication, we definitely got there. And his girlfriend ended up attending every single performance just to make sure that nothing got out of line. But
Hmm.
you know,
Yes. So I'd like,
communication.
yeah. So I'm wondering if would it be worth it? Uh, would it be worth it to invite the jealous? I wouldn't say jealous, the significant other to rehearsal and have try the director talk to the significant other or the other lead actor just to sort of answer questions and walk him through it. Chris, you're shaking your head. No. Why is that? Why is that?
Yeah, why? Because the rehearsal space is a sacred space. It's built on trust. It's a bubble, so to
What
speak.
trust is being violated by having him in there?
My trust as a director, my spirits, my bubble is being burst. No,
Jacklyn, what
um,
do you? Go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
go ahead, Jacqueline. Yeah,
No, just that if I was directing, would I be willing to have a conversation with the partner, like go for coffee or something? Absolutely. Also, because I just love to put my nose where it doesn't belong and I love talking about relationships. But 100% would I not have them in the rehearsal room? No. Also, if I was the actor who was kissing, say in the show, I'm kissing a guy, and his girlfriend, I felt weird about it and she was at rehearsal. Oh, heck no. I'm gonna be feeling so weird and legitimately not feel like I can do my job because she's there like looking at me and it would make me feel so weird.
So I want to. I wish we had time to probe that. All right, that's a fourth podcast, but I guess I shouldn't have said rehearsal. It doesn't necessarily mean rehearsal. Like in like just meet for coffee or something and just walk him through it. Even the other actor, but interesting. So I mean, this is why you guys are the experts. I acted in one sixth grade play in my life, so I'm not here to tell you differently. I just want to end this. We do have to move along. Chris, I do have one final question to cap this question off. If you But you have many enemies, as listeners of this podcast knows. If your wife was acting in a play and she is supposed to kiss one of your enemies, in the play, would you tell her get off the stage or you can't play in this, or would you say go ahead?
Are we talking like now or like way back before the blog?
Answer
Because I have two
however.
different answers.
Answer, please. Let's get both answers. Go
So if it
ahead.
was before I started the blog, I would have just sat there and stewed about it and just been all weird and dramatic and jealous and being like when we got home, I'd be like, "So, do you like him? Do you like that kiss? That kiss was 2 seconds longer than it was last night. What are you doing?" So that things like that. But after the blog, I would just put the guy on blast. So I would write some article and be like, Jason is, what a jerk. He's taking advantage of my wife on stage. How does everybody else feel about this? And blah, blah, blah. I would do a podcast. I would do a vlogging series. I would do tweets. I would do everything
All
about
right.
this. Yeah.
Very good. Well, appreciate that. Let's move along. This one can be a quick one. So I like this one. This Reddit user Misty Cheddar was asking for musical theater quotes for yearbook. Um, so Chris and Jacqueline, I gave this one to you in advance. What are some couple quick choice ones that you would do? Starting it as of today, like if you were a senior in high school, how would you what quote would you put in your yearbook page? Either one of you, go ahead.
Anything really from Sondheim is my first go-to. But I picked this one from Merrily We Roll Along from Our Time. It's our time. Breathe it in. Words to change and words to win. I feel like that's a great quote. So there you
Oh,
go.
that
But
is,
anything from
yeah,
Sondheim.
very astute. Jacqueline, how did you answer this?
Yes. So good, Chris. I will piggyback on that and I have two, but I'll start with the Sondheim one. Um, from Into the Woods, isn't it nice to know a lot and a little bit not? Such a graduation thing too, because you get there and you're like, wow, that like I kind of miss not knowing things, and ignorance is bliss to a certain extent. And then also not because I can't say no to gentlemen, because I certainly can, but I can't say no. Ado Annie, I just like saying yes to things. Like, yes, I'll do your project. Yes, I'll read that play. Yes, I'll do this. So it's something I'm, working on. But like Ado Annie, I can't say no.
So my choice, and as readers know, whenever I get a question regarding musical, I usually go back to 1776, just my favorite musical ever. And my quote is, I think my favorite quote from John Adams, where he says, "This is a revolution, damn it! We're gonna have to offend somebody." I think that's. It's obviously can be construed as a political quote for both Democrats and Republicans, both even in 2025, but also it's a general statement for non-political people. Just you gotta break some eggs sometimes, and sometimes you gotta change. You don't have to worry about offending people. So if you want some, anyway, that's my recommendation for a high school yearbook quote.
I love that one.
Okay, next we're gonna go. We're gonna go to a reader email. Just gonna pull this up here. Sure, I find the right one. Here we go. Reader Mario writes us. Thank you, Mario, for the email. He says, hi, longtime fan. Thank you for what you do. I'm in my 40s and have two young boys. How did you deal with being a musical theater nerd in high school and college? For me, my high school was okay, but in college, I was teased and sometimes bullied when classmates and really dorm mates heard me listening to musicals. Rent was my jam for a long time. My solution was to basically spend as much of my time as possible with my theater peeps, but this prevented me from hanging out with non-theater peeps in my dorm who would just not stop making fun of my love for musicals. I'm worried not much has changed culturally when it comes to the perception of men liking musicals, and I'm thinking of how to advise my boys when they get to middle and high schools, assuming they like musicals as much as I do. I'm curious if you went through the same thing I did in college, and what would be your advice, having gone through it, what your advice would be to people going through, high school and college? That's an interesting question. So, Jacqueline, even though you're not a male, I want to get your perspective on this eventually, because I'm curious if women go through this at all. So I want to hear your opinion. But Chris, obviously, I knew you in high school. So I want to ask, like, so A, did you experience anything like that in college? And B, what is your advice to, how would you counsel Mario here and on how to advise his boys?
Yeah, it's a common thing that happens. I was in college, fairly medium-sized department, but I was one of three guys, and honestly, the only one that was straight. So it was kind of interesting that like often, when you're introduced to people at parties and other gatherings, it's like, what are you majoring in? Theater. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Um, I think it starts with your own confidence and your own comfortableness and your own fandom and things like that, and having a real reason of why you love theater. What is it about performing? Is it for me it was my drive and need for attention, and perception to be cool. And growing up, I always thought that the kids that were in the high school musicals and stuff like that were the coolest kids, on campus, and I kind of wanted to be like them. And so that was my driving force for that. And so yeah, anytime I kind of faced that like awkwardness or perception of not manly enough, and because you love theater and things like that, I kind of brushed it off because I was comfortable in my own skin, at that point. But not everybody's like that. So what I would tell this dad is I think first and foremost he's got to support his sons if they love theater. Support, support, support. That was a huge difference maker for me. My parents supported my pursuit, which only helped my confidence in it. And then also I think you know, helping them explore the art form. What is it about the art form that you like? Is it the singing, or is it the dancing, or is it the actual music? So maybe their love of theater is not necessarily, or musical theater might not be the performance side of it, but it could be the composition side and things like that. So I encourage them to just explore that more. But then also, like I said, go full steam, lean into it, send them to performing arts camps, send them to community theater groups, get them involved as much as possible because again it only helps them find what they love about this art form and feel secure and confident in why they love it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. I just want to throw in my 2 cents too, because I definitely hid my fan. I was never teased for it because I don't think I ever played it in front of everybody, like CDs of 1776 and some of the other stuff I listened to. But because I my freshman year dorm had very, I'll just say, narrow-minded people in it. That's a lot of, I don't want to stereotype, but this is just kind of the facts. They were just kind of athletes who, listened to very popular music and stuff like that, and they just looked down on anything that wasn't like them. Everyone knows that. And the advice I would just tell, I would tell Mario, I would tell you to tell your boys, and what I wish I did was just, if you're in a bad, and this applies to anybody, whether you're getting teased or bullied for anything, if you don't like your dorm, get another one. Don't wait. Don't think it's going to get better. Don't write it out. Find another place, because there is better situations always. you know, um, if it's happening in class, get another class. It's just not worth it. And yes, hang out with your theater group, obviously. But I think his instincts are good. You really don't want to hang out with just your theater groups. You really want to be well versed and just hang out with different groups of people, especially in college. So yeah, just don't wait. If you're in a bad situation, get a different one. No one will care. No one will remember. Jacqueline, does this dynamic exist at all with women with theater in particular?
Definitely not in the same way because I think of like the whole toxic masculinity thing that like is in our culture where it's like, oh, a man is not a man unless he's a certain kind of man. I definitely like when I cut my hair to play Annie and permed it and dyed it, which there was no reason to. It was a two-show run at a very small school. Wasn't performing arts high school, but I got a little bit made fun of. But I feel like for women and for gay men, it's not quite the same because you already
Mm,
had this sort of built in, you're leaning into that camp, that fun, that
yeah.
femininity, that flamboyance. But I would say like if you're asking for advice for your sons, and if your sons do happen to be straight or if they're not sure, it's like it's a great way to meet girls. There's not a lot of straight guys in musical theater, and the ones
Well,
who are, they pull really hot women.
Uh, it's funny you bring that up because I was open around women in college about that. I like, oh, you listen to Rent? Oh yeah, so like that's a thing. And I could recite a couple songs, like bam, done. It was a great conversation starter, a great way to. Some of them didn't listen to musicals either, so it was just
Greg's
the
like
dead
leaning
end.
in
But
for a kiss and he's like, no day but today.
right, right. So right there are upsides to it, and look, just like what you like, be proud of who you are. Really, it's just if people don't find other people, really, that's if I could go back in time, I would definitely tell freshman year Greg to do that. So tell your sons that too when they get there, of course. All right. We have one more question, and then we're gonna wrap up, and this is a fun one. So this is from Reddit user Silver Bayonet, and honestly, this is one of my favorite theater Reddit questions I've seen. Um, my upstairs neighbor spends all day and all night stomping. I would suggest he's learning a dance routine, but he's sporting a cane and he's not elderly. He's mid 30s. So, what are the most obnoxious songs from musicals that I can blast to get back at him? It's only mid afternoon, so I have plenty of time. I've already done 76 trombones and I enjoy being a girl, and tomorrow is going to be next. He went on to say, I went on to play Seasons of Love, Prepare Ye, and Day by Day from Godspell, and he's still stomping. And I also went with Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. All right, so I want to ask you both. You're in an apartment, you're in a dorm, you have a really annoying neighbor for whatever reasons, and you need to get back at them. What song or songs are you blasting? Um, what's your pick to A, really piss them off, and B, something you still have to enjoy because you got to listen to it a lot. And again, if you want to, try and think of a song or two versus like a whole cast album. So I want to see what song you pick. Jacqueline, go ahead. You first.
Okay, so I had one in mind, which I will offer, but thank you for saying that I have to listen to it too, because that changes the game a little. Um, the one that I thought of immediately that I don't want to listen to over and over is Shapoopy. Shapoopy! I don't want to listen to Shapoopy over and over and over and over again. Although to this Reddit user, kudos to you because all those ones you named, like 76 trombones actually probably would have been my number one. Um, but given the fact that we've already cycled through all those, the one that, Greg, that I would pick, thinking about what it would be like for the other person to hear it, but not really be able to hear it, and that I would enjoy, my queen, Audra McDonald, Your Daddy's Son. Lots of dynamic shifts in that. And I don't think they could enjoy it if they weren't actually able to hear the whole thing. But it would be, I love it so much. And I have a little bit of a neurodivergence where I don't mind listening to certain things over and over and over again if I'm obsessed with it.
Right, right.
I could listen to that all day long, and I think it would probably drive the neighbor mad.
Chris, go ahead.
I love for this assignment, I would want to do something that has like crescendo, like unbelievably crescendo. And I won't lie, I low-key love Phantom of the Opera. Like, well, there's a lot of problems with it, but I love music. So I would blast Masquerade probably 8 hours a day on loop because I love it, and I'm gonna perform it as well in the audio in my apartment. So you're gonna hear me doing Andre and all that talk between. I'm gonna play the roles of both Raoul and Christine, and do their little interlude during the song, and then I'm gonna stomp my feet at the end with the when the high trumpets doing their crescendo thing. So yes, Masquerade from Phantom.
That's a
Good.
good
I
one.
was thinking, I really liked his picks of from Godspell. I was going to throw in Jesus Christ Superstar into the mix as well. I also think Don't Cry for Me Argentina is a solid pick. And it's not a slam on the song itself, but again, if I'm expecting the neighbor to not be musical friendly and all that stuff, and that's like obviously a very sweeping ballad and whatever. And I think that would really grate on the non-musical aficionado like a lot, especially if you hear it over and over again and really, really loud. That was just my instinct there. But good luck,
This is
Silver
where
Bayonet.
I was gonna say real quick, I was a senior in college when Wicked came out in 2003. And so everyone in every dorm on my campus that was a theater person would blast the Wicked cast album. So imagine hearing Defying Gravity coming out of like eighth floor windows at full blast.
Right.
So things like when it first came out, which is even better. So that's another one. Defying Gravity, I
Yeah.
think is another one
Yeah.
to really blast it at full point.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. So that is a wrap. So again, if you have questions, so we're gonna do this again. We're gonna do this, probably at least once every couple months or so. So if you have questions you want us to answer, anything along the lines of what you heard this pod or anything community theater related, audition advice, song picks, musical picks, email us theateradviceosb@gmail.com. You can also drop us a comment on any of our social media networks. Make sure you check out Jacklyn and Rachel on the Onstage Blog Theater podcast. If you aren't already subscribe to Onstage Blog on Facebook, X. We're on Blue Sky as well, Instagram, and our YouTube channel, of course, where we've had a lot of great content. Sadly, Donald Trump is making really bad news when it comes to theater in the Kennedy Center, and we're weighing
Yes, he
in.
is.
And yeah, so we have a lot of good and kind of commentary that makes fun of him, and we have more on the way. So you can stay tuned for that. And yeah, no, that's a wrap. So Chris, Jacklyn, thank you very much. And don't forget, if you like this podcast, you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If you're listening on your podcast platform, you can hit follow as well. We appreciate your support, and thank you once again. And some of us will, Jacklyn for sure. We'll see you in the next podcast. Chris and I, for those joining us for the first time, Chris and I we do our own podcast sometimes, especially with more harder hitting news. But Chris pops on the Onstage Blog Theater podcast occasionally, and I will as well. So we will see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Later.